Happy Tree Friends is a controversial show, no matter how you put it. Whether it's because of the premise of the show itself, certain characters, or some episodes being quite polarizing. To say the least, it's impossible to deny that the show has stirred up loads of uproar across its run on the internet. However, one episode stands out, Wishy Washy. This episode is definitely one of the most controversial, period. But how did we get here? This is the retrospect of Wishy Washy. While it might not seem like it, Wishy Washy is actually a very important episode. Let me explain. This episode is what gave Petunia her defining neat freak tendencies. In that, she makes sure everything is clean or organized and will panic if anything is a mess. She has obsessive-compulsive disorder, and it's what she is most known for. However, this trait hadn't always been present. In the first 2 seasons, Petunia basically had no unique character traits. This is even seen in how she was conceived. For reference, this is her concept art. I'm not kidding. This is basically just modern Petunia, just minus the flower, which I'm inclined to guess wasn't thought up yet when this concept art was drawn. Her label literally says skunk, and for the several few episodes she's in, that's pretty much what her character amounts to. She made her debut in the 2nd episode, Housewarming. In this episode, Handy builds Petunia a treehouse. Petunia enters the treehouse for the first time, and it suddenly catches on fire. Somehow, Handy tries his best to put the fire out and kind of succeeds. I mean, she's still alive, but she probably wished she hadn't. And that is basically all to it. The most you can say about this is that, A, this is probably our first episode where all the misfortune happens to one character, and B, Petunia and Handy are probably the only non-duo or pilot characters to share a debut. The latter is slightly more interesting, but I'll get to that later. For the rest of season 1 and 2, she didn't really do anything unique. Like, her main character trait she had was just being the second girl, and thus she mainly hanged out with Giggles, played with dolls, that type of stuff. Even then, Petunia came off as a bit less girly than Giggles. Petunia was basically a female Toothy, and unlike Toothy, she lacked a single trait that made her even remotely distinct. And no, Petunia never uses her skunk spray, except for debatably that one episode. Now that I've mentioned it, she does have an air freshener. Kind of ironic for a creature who's known for being smelly. Well, you see, this is where we get into Petunia's official character bios released at this time, which consistently describe her as sweet-smelling and never raising a stink. In fact, her Collect All card claims that she takes 5 showers a day. Obviously, these are probably meant to be explanations of why she never stinks, so to speak, but Petunia's flavored text became much more important later on. As for her episodes in season 1 and 2, she played Hit the Bottles in one episode. She played Hide and Seek with Flippy. She was harassed by Disco Bear. She also ate Shifty's eye. The most interesting thing that could be said about these appearances is that a majority of them are in a different character's debut episode. Like Toothy, one advantage of Petunia being so dull is that she is very expendable. You need a casualty to showcase the destruction the mole unintentionally causes? Just use Petunia. Need a final victim to cap off Flippy's rampage? Use Petunia. Need to show Disco Bear is a creep? Petunia is there when you need her. Season 2 is more or less the same deal. She flips burgers, she sells lemonade with Giggles, she likes ice cream. What else is there to say? To give credit, Petunia's roles in Season 2 have a bit more substance. Take, for example, Blind Date. Yet again, Disco Bear is trying to pull in Petunia, who actually retaliates by spraying Disco Bear in the eyes, which is admittedly one of the funniest bits in the whole show. As I already mentioned, there's a debate on whether she used pepper spray or skunk spray. Either option would be funny, but I like to imagine it was skunk spray. It basically marks one of the only two instances in the entire show where her using her natural defense mechanism is even remotely implied. Petunia also has her own episode in the form of Hello Dolly, where she picks up the cursed idol and brings it to her house. The episode was fine for what it was, but I really liked Petunia's death. Speaking of which, I think that's probably the most notable part of Petunia's character in this point of the series. She always gets some of the most graphic, absurd, dramatic, and over-the-top deaths in these seasons. HDF always has been graphic, but when it comes to deaths that are outright visceral, the victims usually tend to be Sniffles or Petunia, and sometimes Handy, like her first episode alone was about her being horribly burnt and stomped on by Handy. In Hide and Seek, she suffers what is basically the only bloody Flippy kill in the episode. In Flippin' Burgers, her face is pressed on a grill, and you can see all her veins and muscles. Ice Cold Lemonade is just one of the iconic episodes, period, and it features Petunia getting crushed by a sign, her eyeball cut by a knife, and juiced like a lemon. Shout out to keeping it real, though. That has one of my favorite Petunia deaths. So yeah, the closest Petunia has to a gimmick outside of being the second girl character is just suffering a lot. And unfortunately for Petunia, this only gets worse once we get into the TV series. Petunia made her television debut in One Foot in the Grave. Yet again, she is just Giggle's best friend and a female Toothy. No, really, even the TV series is just in your face about it. For a while, she stayed bland for her next couple appearances until Four on the Floor, where she has her own episode, Wishy Washy. And it's here that Petunia basically had a massive upgrade. It starts with Petunia taking a shower. Maybe her fifth, who knows. After she gets out, she puts on her clothes. Well, her accessories, and puts on some lotion. At this moment, she notices one of the bottles in her mirror is out of place. It's here where we are introduced to Petunia's OCD. She hyperventilates, locks in, and promptly puts the bottle back the way they should be. She closes her mirror, only to notice a splotch on it, causing her to hyperventilate once more and wrap her entire hand in toilet paper just to clean it. After she's done, she tries to flush the entire toilet paper. Yeah, Petunia is not smart, but almost nobody in the show is. After the toilet backs up, he calls Lumpy the plumber. Now, if you know anything about plumbers, you'll know they aren't exactly the cleanest workers. This is demonstrated by Lumpy leaving a trail of muddy footprints, and causing this to happen while unclogging Petunia's toilet. Petunia rightfully freaks out. TBH, I would hyperventilate too if this happens. She breathes into her paper bag she's been using to hyperventilate up to this point, but it pops, so she uses a glove instead, only to choke on it. Now, Lumpy's solution is trying to unclog Petunia's mouth like it was a toilet. Obviously, that doesn't work, so he instead uses CPR like a smart person. That doesn't work either, and frankly, I can't say I exactly blame him, since given the other episodes where CPR is used. So he just decides, screw it, and sticks his entire arm down Petunia's throat. He pulls out the glove, and yet again, Petunia rightfully freaks out. She goes out of her way to clean her entire house and herself. For that matter, she brushes so hard that her gums start bleeding. She also drinks body wash. I mean, Lumpy literally stuck his dirty hand and plunger inside of Petunia. Meanwhile, Lumpy's in the sewer pipes, sticking a drill in one of them, which leads into Disco Bear's bathtub and impale him in the eyeball. The pipe then sprays a gush of water at Lumpy and also sends the sharp edge of the drill into a heater. Lumpy pulls it out, and what follows is him being sprayed and crushed underneath the machine. This causes all of Petunia's faucets and other forms of water supplies to stop working. Petunia walks into her basement to see what's wrong, only to be greeted by a green gooey flood and Lumpy's horrific corpse. This is straight out of a Ren and Stimpy close-up. Out of shock, She tumbles into the water, causing her fur to get dirty. She rushes upstairs to clean herself, but nothing works, so she opts for that. This scene itself is just, yeah, I don't want to show it, because this actually got YouTube to take down the episode off their platform. I'm just gonna say that what Petunia does is something that very much requires a trigger warning, and that's how the episode ends. Wishy Washy is probably one of the most controversial episodes in this whole show. I'm being completely serious. As a whole, it's probably one of the most notable. For one, it gives Petunia actual characterization. Beforehand, Petunia was basically Giggles 2.0, or more accurately, female Toothy. However, Wishy Washy properly fleshes Petunia out by establishing her to be a neat freak who hates being dirty. Honestly, I like this take on Petunia, since it adds a layer of depth to her character. However, this character trait didn't come out of nowhere. We've already established that early character bios of Petunia had a heavy emphasis on her sweet scent, and her collect them all card did state she took 5 showers a day. Also, she has an air freshener. Making her a neat freak was genius, and it adds a layer of ironic to Petunia's character. However, this also makes her quite controversial among fans. Petunia's OCD is quite exaggerated. Like, very much so. This controversial aspect is kind of something HDF has in general, since many characters are just stereotypes of actual disabilities. Like Handy has no hands, Mole is blind, Flippy has PTSD. As a whole, either you find these exaggerated depictions hilarious or insensitive. In Petunia's case, it definitely plays a huge part of why Wishy Washy is so hated, especially for that ending. HDF always has been an offensive show, like it sometimes gives South Park a run for its money. But never have they pulled this stunt in the show before, and even YouTube agrees, since it's currently the only episode to be taken down. Well, now it shares that title with INW. Is there just something inherently offensive about Petunia I'm missing? What's wrong with that episode? Anyway, Petunia's fate in the episode is also a testament to her reputation for having some of the most gruesome deaths in the show. I think this is the main contributor for having such a reputation for that. It's easily her most infamous death yet, and it's one of the most infamous deaths in the whole show. Heck, it rivals tongue-in-cheek. What's more, it's not even the only episode's graphic death. As mentioned, we already got that close-up shot of Lumpy. This might be even more graphic than Petunia's demise. This is straight out of a Ren and Stimpy cartoon. There's so much detail in Lumpy's corpse. It's legitimately scary. Also, Lumpy is another character who's very well known for having the worst deaths. I'd argue he has the worst deaths next to Sniffles. He always dies in the most dragged-out, graphic, or painful ways possible. Some people theorize Lumpy's corpse is also the reason why this episode got nuked. I mean, I kind of doubt it, but it does feel a bit out of place. This episode, in general, is kind of disgusting. Again, general gross humor in HDF isn't anything new by any means, but this episode is filled with all sorts of disgusting jokes and imagery. On a less gross note, the Disco Bear cameo. That was a highlight. In my opinion, Disco Bear is the best character in this TV series. I mean, in Wishy Washy, he was literally on screen for a few seconds, but they made the most of his screen time. His nice bathtub, his theme song playing in the background, and his funny demise. Speaking of other characters besides Petunia and Lumpy, there's nobody else. I think this episode probably has the smallest cast of characters alongside I've Got You Under My Skin, and I can't say I'm surprised. This episode was mainly Petunia's time to shine, and oh boy did she. It's also Petunia's only time to shine. Yeah, despite being a major character, this is her one starring role in the TV series. I mean, She Does Come Close and Home is where the hurt is, but that's more of an ensemble cast. As for my opinion on this episode, I respect it. While I can totally see why it's polarizing, I like how it fleshes out Petunia into a more interesting character. I won't say her being a neat freak is Shakespearean, but it does give her character a bit more nuance. It makes Petunia quite sympathetic and relatable, and you really feel for her when she gets more and more dirty. In fact, I think this episode excels in the horror element. Petunia gradually losing her mind as her OCD gets the best of her makes for a really hardcore premise. As controversial the ending is, it is ultimately a fitting conclusion. Also, there's a lot of moments I found funny, regardless of how you feel about the episode. Some moments genuinely make me laugh. Also, let me glaze Disco Bear again. This scene was one of the best parts of this whole episode. I give Wishy Washy 4 sponges out of 5. I can see why this episode is so divisive, but I think it's still ultimately well written. This episode also made Petunia a better character. But how did this affect the episodes moving forward? Well, in Home is where the hurt is. Her OCD is also heavily prominent. She gets some muck on her chest while looking through some pipes and frantically tries to clean it off. She also cleans some slime dripping from the ceiling. Her death yet again plays into Petunia's OCD as the pieces of Lumpy's corpse falls onto Petunia's head and she rushes into a shower to clean herself, only to be electrocuted. This is because after she got muck on her while handling the pipes, she goes straight to Lumpy to put them together instead, and naturally, he combines the water pipes with an electrical one. Honestly, that's one of the most clever deaths yet. It also reappears in Wingin' It. She gets stuck in a bathroom covered in Flaky's vomit, and goes out of her way to clean all of it up. She then gets her necklace sucked into the sink and dies. RIP. There's one aversion to this newfound personality of Petunia, however, and that's take a hike, where she drinks dirty water. However, this was because this episode was actually written before Wishy Washy, and it can be retroactively explained as Petunia being so dehydrated. In fact, there's so many things that's just wrong with Take a Hike that honestly, this doesn't even stand out all that much. So yeah, in short, Petunia had probably changed and evolved the most. Unlike Toothy, she actually gets an episode specifically made to make her bland character less bland. And unlike Giggles, her new characterization sticks. And unlike Mime, she has enough episodes to let this characterization shine. Although unlike Disco Bear, she only has one starring role, so it isn't necessarily focused on a lot. And unfortunately, Petunia still doesn't get that much time to shine after the TV series. Yeah, post-TV Petunia is basically just pre-TV Petunia, in that her roles are just interchangeable with Giggles or Toothy. Granted, they do reference her OCD sometimes. Only twice, but for the most part, Petunia went back to being a blank slate. She does have one more starring role, that being I Nub You, where she pairs with Handy after losing her own arms. Now, you know how I said Petunia is special for sharing a debut episode with a different character? Well, I guess there's a chance this episode is meant to reference that. Although it could also just be a coincidence. They actually got paired again in the Love Bite short, My Better Half. Handy X Petunia is pretty much the only other special thing about her. It's cute, and I absolutely ship it myself, but it doesn't do much to make her less basic. Also, yes, her deaths continue to be brutal. There's one episode where she is violently ripped apart by a demon of things. She is also the first victim of Lammy and Mr. Pickles. Petunia is also killed by them in a royal flush, which has possibly one of the most brutal Petunia deaths yet. Overall, Petunia's track record on the show is quite interesting. She started out as just a clone of Giggles, with her most renounced hallmarks being her exceptionally graphic episodes. Then the TV series changed that by making Petunia a neat freak and giving her an episode that's one of the most polarizing ones yet. Then she reverts back to being plain, Wishy Washy is, without a doubt, the second most controversial regular episode in the show, but it's hard to deny it is one of the show's most impactful episodes. It pushes the envelope in new ways the show hasn't done before without it feeling out of place. I can understand the episode not being everyone's cup of tea, but I respect it for what it was trying to do. As for Petunia, she's also a character I really like. Ultimately, she's not really a complex character. Far from it. But I still appreciate the nuance she gained across the 7 seasons of the show. She doesn't stand out all that much, but her OCD makes her unique, and even since the beginning, she remains an iconic part of the show, thanks in part due to her usage, especially for many of her exceptionally brutal demises. I just hope one day Petunia's OCD makes a grand comeback, and maybe she will have another chance to shine.